You step through the gilded doors. The hinges don't creak. They sigh, quietly, expensively, ushering you into a world where every surface gleams like spilt sunlight. Above your head, chandeliers bloom in golden branches, each crystal burning with reflected candlelight. The floor beneath your shoes isn't stone, it's polished ambition. Marble, cold and impossibly smooth, reflects the flickering flames like shallow water. You can see your silhouette trailing behind you, distorted by grandeur. A soft rustle catches your ear. Silks whisper past, dozens of them. Ladies of the court float down the hallway like phantoms in pearls. Jewels hang from their throats like chains, glittering with captured light. Their fingers, thin, pale, adorned with rings the size of plums, trail across walls embroidered with scenes from half a world away. A hunt in Persia, a baptism in Rome, a war that ended 3 kings ago. You've arrived, you think. This is the fairy tale made real. The books lied, but beautifully. This place, the great hall, the corridors, the mirrored staircases, feels like something dreamt by a dying empress. The air itself tastes perfumed, sharp with rose and something darker. There's music somewhere far away, the faint echo of a lute maybe, or a flute being played behind silk curtains. No one is speaking loudly, they don't have to. The building does all the boasting for them. Then it hits you, not a sound, not a sight, a smell. At first it's hard to place, something sweet, cloying, floral, but too thick, like roses steeped in decay. Then comes the sharp tang beneath it, sweat, flesh, something metallic, and under that, rot, faint, but growing stronger. You blink, your eyes begin to sting. Across the room a nobleman bows with exquisite grace. His doublet gleams, his lace cuffs flutter like moths, but his skin is sallow, his lips cracked, and when he straightens something moves near his collar, a flicker, a twitch, a flea maybe, or something worse. One of the ladies curtsies with the kind of elegance that could only be taught at court. Her dress shimmers like moonlight caught in oil. But as she turns, you see it. The red rawness behind her ear, barely hidden beneath the powder. A rash, number the skin is flaking, inflamed. She raises a gloved hand to adjust her wig. The fingers tremble slightly. The illusion begins to fracture. The perfume isn't luxury, it's defense. A desperate losing war against something older than wealth. A human stench. You inhale again, slower this time, and now you understand. The air is thick with it. The sweat of hundreds who haven't bathed in weeks. The rotting teeth behind powdered lips. The infected sores are hidden beneath the brocade. The piss that soaks into imported carpets. The shit was thrown from windows into courtyards below. All of it wrapped in the choking embrace of musk, civet and rose oil. Not to seduce, but to survive. You're not in a fairy tale. You're in the belly of a beast wearing a crown. This is not the world of Disney princes and golden-haired queens. This is the real royal court, the one they don't teach you about in school, the one where soap is superstition, where lice are part of the costume, where divine right means never having to apologize for smelling like a corpse. That polished throne, it's been sat on by men with ulcers weeping through their stockings, those jewelled tiaras, balanced on wigs teeming with parasites. That banquet, served in halls where chamber pots overflow behind velvet drapes. This is where appearances prevail and reality withers, where elegance was armour and dignity was a mask held tight over a face crawling with filth. You came here seeking beauty, but beauty in this place came at a price, and the royals paid it with their bodies, layer by layer, day by day, until nothing remained but powdered ghosts wrapped in gold. Because here, in the heart of power, health meant suspicion, cleanliness meant rebellion, and filth. Filth was the perfume of kings. It is the last Friday of the month. You're summoned before dawn, feet bare against the freezing stone of Greenwich Palace. The kitchen fires have been burning since midnight. Not for food, for buckets. 20 men move in relay, hauling, straining, cursing quietly, bringing boiling water from the lowest kitchens to the Queen's private chambers. The corridors smell of smoke and wet linen. You've been chosen for the most delicate, the most dangerous, the most dreaded task in England. You will prepare Her Majesty's bath. Once a month, just once. The most powerful woman in the known world, ruler of empires, defeater of kings, virgin of myth, sits in a wooden tub lined with silk to protect her from splinters. You arrange her towels with military precision. You measure the temperature of the water not with instruments but by instinct. Too hot, and she screams. Too cold, and the royal flesh seizes. Just right means silence. Just right means survival. She does not speak to you. You undress her carefully, layer by layer. Brocade, linen, a stiff bodice that cracks at the seams. Her skin is pale. Too pale. Not the pallor of nobility, but of poison. As the final layer comes away, you see it. Her face. Not skin. Not really. A crust. A mask. A second face made of death. This is Venetian ceruse, the Queen's daily ritual, her royal armour, a mixture of vinegar, water and white lead. Applied every morning, never removed, day after day, week after week. It clings to her in layers, each new coat trapping the old like geological strata, powdered time compressing into a crust of vanity and decay. When she steps into the bath, the water reacts. It hisses softly as flakes dissolve. The first few seconds are quiet. Then the surface begins to change. The lead lifts in sheets. The water goes grey, not cloudy, dense, like milk curdled by rot. Her face, unmasked, is a battlefield. Redness, peeling, patches of raw skin. You try not to look. You fail. The scent rises slowly. Vinegar, sweat, something metallic. Underneath that, a deeper rot. It hits the back of your throat. You do not cough. You do not flinch. Your job is to stand there, perfectly still, while she bathes in the runoff of her disintegration. This is not beauty. This is a ritual, and ritual has rules. She soaks in silence. You cannot speak. You must not show disgust. You hold the towel open when summoned. You avert your eyes as she rises, glistening, shivering, streaked in lead and flakes of her dead skin. It is over in 15 minutes, but it haunts you for weeks. She will apply fresh ceruse by mid-morning, a new layer. The cycle will begin again. Her breath already smells faintly sour, her gums blackening beneath rotting teeth. Her hair is mainly gone, hidden by wigs that itch and crawl with unseen movement. But the face must remain white, impossibly white, because white means purity, and purity means power. Water, for her, is not a cleanser. It is a threat. Physicians warn against it. They say bathing opens the pores to corruption, that it allows disease to slip beneath the skin. Clean skin is dangerous to the skin. Exposed, vulnerable. It's better to cover it, seal it, paint over it until nothing human remains. And so they do. All of them. Kings, queens, dukes, empresses. They bathe in intervals so rare they require ceremony. They perfume instead. Thick, choking scents designed not to charm but to smother. Lavender oil mixed with ambergris and civet, gloves soaked in rosewater, gowns brushed with crushed herbs. Every surface of their bodies becomes a battlefield of fragrance, a wall, a mask, a lie. The royal bath is not about hygiene. It is about illusion. She will emerge from the room dressed in gold, powdered and proud, the very image of majesty. Crowds will cheer. Courtiers will bow. Artists will immortalize her in white. No one will smell the truth beneath the surface, but you will. Because you were there. You saw the water turn black. You saw the mask fall. And you will never forget what lies underneath. The hair is the first lie. From across the ballroom she looks divine. Her head crowned with a towering confection of braids, pearls and powder. rising half a foot above her skull like the top tier of a wedding cake sculpted by angels. The shape is impossible, architectural, gravity-defying. You wonder how many hands it took to build it, how many hours, how many servants holding pins in their teeth and prayers in their hearts. You get closer. The illusion breaks, not all at once, just enough. A faint movement along the seam of the wig, a shadow that twitches when it shouldn't, and then you see it, something alive nestled beneath the powdered curls. She doesn't flinch, she doesn't even notice, because it's always there, they're always there. This is not hair, this is habitat. The court's most elaborate hairstyles were not symbols of elegance, they were ecosystems, and the creatures that lived inside them didn't knock. They nested, colonized, bred. Each royal coiffure began with the animal fat, rendered from bear, ox or boar, thick, yellowish, greasy, slathered onto the natural hair, then layered with false pieces, human or horse hair stitched in carefully. On top of this came powder, white, grey, even pink or blue, depending on the season. But the powder didn't dry the fat. It bonded with it, created a waxy paste that sealed everything in. Then came time. Days passed, then weeks. The fat turned rancid. The powder clumped. The natural oils mixed with sweat. The result was a soft, warm, rotting biome, ideally suited for parasites, lice, fleas, mites. Entire colonies lived inches from a queen's brain, feeding on her blood while she greeted ambassadors and signed treaties with a smile. You picture her, don't you, standing beneath the gilded arch. Her gown rustled like dried leaves, a fan in one hand, a rosary in the other. Behind her eyes a scream clawing to get out, because her scalp is on fire, not metaphorically, not emotionally, burning from within, scratched raw beneath layers of woven hair, bleeding into the wig's foundation, but she cannot scratch, not in public, not during court. So she carries a scratching stick, a long jewelled tool made of ivory or silver, designed to pierce the fortress without ruining the style. Some are straight, others curved like shepherd's hooks, fashion accessories, yes, but in truth, instruments of survival. Each court lady had her own, passed down like heirlooms, engraved, personalized, because in this world you did not simply endure infestation, you accessorized it, you lived with it, you normalized it. The court became a stage and everyone played their part. No one spoke of the lice, they simply adjusted their fans, cleared their throats, and whispered about politics while feeling tiny legs crawl across their scalps. Etiquette manuals explained how to scratch discreetly. Hairdressers are trained to work around open sores. Powder boys learned to sweep away the dead without comment. Sometimes the wigs were so infested that they had to be burned, not cleaned, not combed, set on fire and replaced. But the queen would never go bald. That would be a scandal. Her scalp could be oozing. Her hairline was gone. The flesh beneath her crown was raw and mottled. Still, a fresh construction would be built before dawn because the image mattered more than the body. The crown must never fall, even if the woman beneath it was falling apart. And through it all, appearances, public audiences, state banquets, religious ceremonies, wigs crawling with vermin, powder reeking of decay, servants whispering of bleeding sores beneath sapphire combs. Do you think the portraits lied? But they didn't. The pearls were real, the jewels were real, the height, the poise, the frozen smile, all real, but they left something out. They left out the lice, the filth, the rot inside the grandeur, because to show that would be to betray the great unspoken truth, that beauty here is not health. It is suffering in silence, hidden beneath layers of hair and powder, greased with the fat of animals, crawling with creatures that fed on royal blood and stayed. The king doesn't bathe. He says it weakens the body. He says God made sweat to purge sin, not to be scrubbed away. His courtiers nod, smile, and agree with words they no longer believe. But you, a visitor to the English court, fresh from a continent that at least pretends to wash, feel it immediately. You step into the receiving chamber. You are told it's where policy is shaped, where alliances are brokered, where the King of England greets ambassadors with wit and dignity. What you find is something else entirely. The smell is the first ambassador, thick, rank. It sits low in the lungs, not sharp like rot, but dense, like damp wool left in a cellar. The tapestries hang heavy with moisture, but it's not water. It's the oils of flesh trapped over the years. It's hair grease and fabric dust and the broken bodies of thousands of insects crushed beneath royal thighs. You take your place, you sit, and within seconds, you feel it. A tickle on the inside of your wrist, then behind your ear, then the back of your neck. You shift slightly. Try not to scratch. Another tickle, lower this time, then a prick, like a needle pressing into the skin, then another. Your skin begins to crawl. Literally. You're no longer alone in your clothes. They found you. The lice. They live in the cushions, in the folds of the king's upholstered throne, in the grain of the wood. They breed in his hat, which he hasn't removed in weeks. They feed on his blood at night and on yours during the day. This is not courtly etiquette. It's a shared infestation, a quiet communion of flesh and parasite. Lady Anne Clifford wrote of it without flinching. She sat for an hour in Sir Thomas Erskine's chamber and left, in her words, lousy. Not metaphorically, not figuratively, crawling. Her gown, her sleeves, her stockings, colonised by the court's most faithful residents. Even the furniture seems to breathe. That's not your imagination. The cushions are warm, not from the fire, but from the movement beneath the fabric. They wriggle, shift, carry their little bloodlines forward, generation after generation, fed by the Empire's finest veins. You can't speak of it? No one does. But everyone knows. Everyone scratches. Not openly, of course. Not during official business. There are ways. A flick of the wrist here. A repositioning of the collar there. Eyes glazed, not from boredom, but from the endless war happening just beneath the skin. And the king? He itches too. He just does it grander. He scratches during audiences, mid-sentence, while dictating laws. He reaches beneath his robe and drags his fingernails across his thigh with a sigh, then resumes talking about trade policy, or the divine right of kings as though nothing just happened, as though his skin isn't a banquet table for vermin. You begin to understand why his mood shifts without warning, why courtiers whisper about his tempers and silences. This isn't eccentricity. This is sleep deprivation, chronic irritation, and a nervous system under siege. They call him the wisest fool in Christendom. They never ask what happens to a mind that never rests, what sanity means when your body is never truly yours, when every royal robe is a moving habitat, every chair a nest, every touch a transfer of infestation. And still, ceremony continues. Ambassadors bow, wigs are adjusted, insects are fed. Diplomacy occurs when men fight not to tear open their skin in public, while nobles learn to smile through the crawl, to discuss war and taxes, while fleas burrow into their socks and lice lay eggs in their collars. This is not an empire of men. This is an empire of itch. A kingdom ruled not just by a king, but by a million tiny tyrants, never crowned, never named, who live in silence, just beneath the skin. It doesn't smell like flowers, not really. You step into the Queen's receiving chamber, and the scent hits like a velvet hammer. Thick, sweet, violent. It clings to your throat like syrup and makes your lungs feel slow, as if they've forgotten how to breathe air that isn't drowning in ambergris and musk. You expected roses, maybe lavender. What you find is something far more ancient, animal, alchemical, weaponized. This isn't perfume, it's defense. You're not meant to enjoy the smell, you're meant to endure it. It isn't here to charm you, it's here to mask something much older, much more human. Because beneath the jasmine and civet, beneath the powdered gloves and the scented fans, something else waits. Rot, rotting teeth, infected gums, abscesses hidden beneath pearl necklaces, sweat soaked into silk that's never seen water, sores beneath layers of lace. And always, always the reek of unwashed flesh, sweetened only by the memory of better hygiene long forgotten. The Queen lifts her gloved hand to her nose. A sachet of herbs is tucked into the palm. Cloves, mint, dried orange peel soaked in vinegar. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. The message is clear. Breathe this, or die trying. The courtiers follow suit. Everyone has their scent armour, gloves steeped in rose oil, gowns brushed with powdered civet, handkerchiefs soaked in frankincense. They carry pomanders on chains, swinging like censers at a funeral. They smell like gods. But what they cover is decay. You want to step back. Your eyes water. The chamber is warm, not hot but humid, thick with a perfume that doesn't drift but clings, pooling in the corners like fog. You're not standing in a room, you're standing in a cloud of deception. Every breath is a betrayal of your senses, because nothing here is clean. Everything is layered skin, layered clothes, layered scents, one over the other. No washing, just covering, masking. Piling on until the original truth, the body, the filth, the human underneath, is buried under a cathedral of fragrance. And yet, even that has a hierarchy. There is status in smell. The rich don't smell better because they are cleaner. They smell stronger, more complex. Their perfumes come from whales and glands and musk scraped from the bowels of animals. Ambergris, whale vomit aged in the sun until it softens into wax. Civet, scraped from the anal glands of wild cats. Musk, taken from the sacks of Himalayan deer, dried and ground into powder. These are not accidents, they are currency. To wear the scent of something so rare, so putrid, so violently extracted, that is power. That is prestige. The more unbearable the perfume, the higher the rank. A duchess may smell like roses, a queen smells like the inside of a sacred tomb, and the rooms, they suffer for it. Ceilings sag with the weight of it, drapes absorb it, cushions exhale it when sat upon. The walls of Versailles became so saturated with layered perfume that visitors reported hallucinations, headaches, nosebleeds. Pregnant women fainted in corridors, musicians vomited in the orchestra pit. The air became chemical warfare, an invisible fog designed to beat back the advancing front of human rot. And still it wasn't enough. The sweat found its way out. The wounds wept. The teeth rotted. The perfumes mixed with hot breath and disease created new scents, mutated smells, frankenstench, rose and pus, musk and phlegm, civet and gangrene. You could walk into a room and smell 300 years of suffering trapped in velvet curtains. But no one spoke of it. Instead, they talked of notes, top notes, middle notes, bass notes, as if this was music, not a battle. They composed fragrances like war generals, combining strength and subtlety to wage quiet olfactory violence on each other. No one wore perfume. They armed themselves with it. And when you leave the room, gasping, blinking, wiping your tongue against your sleeve, you realize something terrifying. It worked. You don't remember the stench of bodies anymore, only the scent of musk, of civet, of flowers that never grew in any garden. And that's the point. You were never supposed to see the rot. You were only supposed to smell the lie. There is no ceremony for this. No fanfare, no trumpets, no procession through marble halls. Just a quiet knock at a private door, a whisper behind a curtain, a summons, wordless but final. And then he enters, the man every noble fears, envies, and secretly prays to become, the groom of the stool, His hands are clean, always, impossibly so. He carries nothing but a small box, lacquered, carved, lined with silk. It holds the king's most sacred object, not a sceptre, not a sword, a toilet seat, portable, personal, and grotesquely revered. You watch as he kneels, not in prayer, not in submission, but in preparation. Because he is about to perform the most intimate duty in all of England, he will clean the king. You think this is a joke, a grotesque relic, a medieval absurdity. But this man, this kneeling figure with a cloth in one hand and court secrets in the other, wields more influence than most generals. He handles the king's excrement, and in return, he holds his confidence. Because no one else sees the monarch like this, unrobed, unguarded, sweating, groaning, cursing softly while his bowels betray him. It begins. The king lowers himself onto the stool. It creaks under his weight. The room smells of spoiled meat, damp wool, and something acrid, a rot that no incense can mask. His robes are lifted, revealing his pale and veined thighs. His body is breaking down, ulcers festering, joints swollen, breath wheezing with each effort, and still he rules. The groom waits. He knows the signs, the sounds, the rhythm. He can tell from the king's posture whether it will be fast or slow, painful or easy. He observes, with the attention of a surgeon, the deference of a priest, and when it is done, he cleans, cloth to skin, wounds to waist, disease to duty, sometimes with water, sometimes with vinegar, sometimes with bare hands wrapped in linen soaked in rose oil to stave off the stench. He knows what the king ate, how it passed, how it smells. He tracks his sovereign's digestion like a map of the realm. This is not servitude. It is surveillance, and the stool becomes the throne. Because while the king groans and sweats, he talks. No formal words, but murmurs, confessions, fears, questions he cannot ask his council, names he dares not say aloud in the throne room. Here, on the edge of shame, the truth leaks out alongside everything else. Who will inherit? Who cannot be trusted? What keeps him awake at night? The groom hears it all. He advises. He listens. He nods while wiping blood from cracked skin. He smiles while soaking soiled linens. He whispers while folding the cloth that touched the monarch's most secret places. And the court, they know. They know who whispers in the king's ear, who is closest, who understands the monarch's pain not in theory but in scent and texture and temperature. They see him pass through the hall and step aside. They bow. They offer favours because the power here is not clean, it is filthy. And yet he is envied, because the groom is trusted, more than the chancellor, more than the archbishop. He holds the king's body in its most human, most broken form, and in doing so he has his mind. The position is passed from father to son. Generations of men trained to wipe waste with reverence, to trade dignity for influence. They rise in the court, they gain land, they influence marriages, treaties, and declarations of war, all while kneeling in other men's excrement. And the toll? It is never spoken of, but it shows. In the eyes, in the hands that tremble when not working, in the dreams. You don't serve that much suffering, that much sickness, that much rot without losing something essential. Imagine waking each day knowing your job is to kneel behind a rotting monarch, breathing in infections, cleaning what no one else will touch. Imagine doing it with pride. Because here, in the palace, there is no higher access than the stool. There is no closer intimacy than filth, no deeper loyalty than that which is washed clean every morning, with cloth, with silence, with love masquerading as duty. The countess is ill. That's the official word. A distressing malady, the doctors whisper behind velvet curtains. Nothing specific, nothing scandalous, just vague enough to conceal the truth. But you've seen her up close. You've seen the way she moves, carefully, as if her skin is turning against her. She's dying, not quickly and not quietly. The disease, most likely syphilis, eats her in pieces. First, the rash, then the sores, then the flesh around her mouth. Her nose begins to collapse. Her teeth blacken and loosen. Her eyes glaze over, swimming in pain and fever dreams. She cannot stand scented oils. Her skin burns. The very air hurts her. So the physicians prescribe something soothing. Milk. Warm. Thick. Innocent. You help prepare it. Dozens of buckets hauled from cows kept just for her. Heated slowly over low flames and poured into a copper basin lined with silk. She steps in with assistance, her body folding into the milky bath like a woman returning to the womb, and for a moment it helps. She sighs, her eyes closed. The pus from her sores dissolves in the milk. Her skin flakes into it, layer by layer. Blood tints the surface pink. But she smiles. Not because the pain is gone, it's not, but because she believes this is healing, believes this act, this performance of purity, is sacred. When the bath is over, her servants collect the milk. They do not throw it out. That would be wasteful. They pour it into barrels, wrap them in cloth, and send them to the poor, as charity. You don't understand at first. You think it's a mistake. No one could believe disease-soaked bathwater is fit for anyone, let alone children in winter, but they do. The nobles nod approvingly. They call it a Christian gesture. They use words like giving, humility, and grace. You see the truth. They are giving death, one bowl at a time. Imagine it. A starving family in the countryside, cold seeping through the floorboards, a knock at the door, a delivery from the countess, a gift. Milk. They rejoice. They pray for her health. They warm the liquid over the fire and serve it to their children. They do not know that each mouthful carries blood, pus, and skin from a dying noble woman, that it is laced with the bacteria of 100 open wounds, and the children get sick, fevers, rashes, convulsions. The mother's breasts go dry from illness. The father cannot work. The sickness spreads silently, quietly, like the Countess's disease itself, a contagion of class, masked as mercy. She does not know. Or perhaps she does. Perhaps she chooses not to see. She believes that her suffering is sacred, embodying nobility. That her milk bath, tainted as it is, still holds some spiritual essence, some curative residue of aristocratic blood. To share it is not cruelty. It is generosity in its highest form. This is not rare. This is a ritual. Nobles give what they discard. Rotten food, contaminated cloth, dead animals, old cosmetics, and yes, I used bath milk. They provide it with open hands and closed hearts. The poor thank them, and die quietly. Because the structure is not broken. It is designed. The cruelty is not accidental. It is systemic. The nobles bathe in luxury, then weaponize the runoff. They pray over it, bless it, ship it to the sick, and when the death toll rises, they do not blame the milk. They blame the bodies of the poor, too weak, too impure, too fragile to survive even charity. The Countess dies eventually, not in agony, not in filth, in silk, surrounded by candles and prayers and the scent of amber and lilies. A priest says she lived a life of generosity. A monument is erected. Her portrait remains in the hall, a woman of compassion, of Christian virtue. No one counts the dead children in the villages. No one remembers the milk, but you do, because you were there when it turned pink. You were there when the pus swirled like clouds, and you watched them seal it in barrels with ribbons, like a gift. You've seen the paintings. The palace gleams like divine architecture. Windows shining gold beneath a sun that never sets, long galleries lined with mirrors, silk shoes clicking across marble floors, chandeliers the size of trees, and everywhere the glittering promise of civilization is perfected. But step closer. Smell it. The illusion cracks with your first breath. Because Versailles, the beating heart of royal France, the temple of elegance and etiquette, was, in truth, a golden cesspit. An architectural miracle built not on marble or power, but on 10,000 human stomachs with nowhere to go. Start with the math. At its height, over 10,000 people lived here. Royals, courtiers, servants, guards, musicians, diplomats, mistresses, cooks, children, dogs, horses, all of them eating, drinking, sweating and defecating. Now ask, where did it all go? The answer is simple, nowhere. There were no toilets, not really, just a few scattered privies, small wooden booths over shallow pits, overflowing by mid-morning, avoided by midday, useless by evening. Pipes cracked, cesspools leaked, drainage failed. Versailles wasn't built for people, it was built for a god-king's fantasy. Plumbing was not divine, so it was ignored. So people adapted. You wake in the middle of the night housed in a corridor-turned bedroom. Your stomach turns. There is no chamber pot, no latrine. So you do what the nobles did. Relieve yourself in the fireplace, or a corner, or behind a curtain. In the morning the servants will sweep it up if they notice. Others go bold. You attend a morning service in the palace chapel. A man, well dressed, powdered, steps onto the balcony overlooking the nave, unbuttons his breeches and urinates over the balustrade. Into the chapel, onto the floor. No one flinches, because this is normal. This is Versailles. You hear stories whispered through clenched jaws. The Queen herself struck by falling waste while walking the interior courtyard. Human excrement raining from above. Visitors bringing umbrellas, not for the weather but for defence. Palace carpets reeking beneath layers of rose oil. Walls darkened not by age but by years of piss splashing upwards and soaking into velvet. Children grow up in this. They learn to walk around puddles. Not water, waste. They learn to cover their mouths when entering galleries, not out of etiquette, but to avoid gagging. They do not flinch at the stench of decay. They breathe it. It is air. It is life. And the court? It doesn't stop. Dukes debate inheritance rights while stepping over human feces. Countesses give birth in rooms where chamber pots slosh against the walls. The king holds council above chambers where latrines leak directly into kitchens. A royal pastry, still steaming, prepared beneath pipes corroded with rot, leaking drips of sewage onto the floor below. But Versailles had rules. Always Versailles had rules. If you needed to relieve yourself during an audience, you did so discreetly, in the hallway or behind a curtain. If you were a lady in waiting, your gown was designed to absorb and conceal. Layers of petticoats soaked with urine carried it along carpets. Fashion as filtration. Movement as waste management. Etiquette evolved to match the filth. There were codes for where to walk, for how to dispose of clothes, for areas with the worst smell, and times to avoid specific halls. Don't go near the Mercury Room after supper. Avoid the Dauphin's quarters when it rains, whispered warnings. Survival tips passed from servant to servant. Everyone knew. No one spoke aloud. The Sun King himself, Louis XIV, moved through it all untouched. His path cleared, his nose filled with perfumed fans. His world was carefully constructed to keep the rot at arm's length, but it seeped in anyway. The walls of Versailles grew damp, the corridors sweated, beneath the paintings of gods mould bloomed, under gold-trimmed drapery insects nested. This wasn't an accident, it was designed. The palace was never meant to sustain life. It was built to project divinity, not to serve humanity. The filth came not from failure, but from refusal. The king would not humble his heaven with pipes and sewage. He chose grandeur over sanitation. And so, Versailles became a contradiction made of gold, a palace of angels where everyone lived like animals. Ambassadors from clean cities fainted in corridors, visitors vomited in gardens, musicians developed lung infections, pregnant women miscarried from the fumes, but the balls continued. The masks were worn, the candles burned, and the court danced above floors slick with piss, surrounded by the smell of death wrapped in jasmine and musk, as if refusing to acknowledge the waste would make it disappear, as if denial could purify the air, but it didn't. Versailles reeked, and the world bowed anyway. You've been taught that cleanliness is next to godliness. But in 15th century Spain, cleanliness was treason. The Queen, Isabella of Castile, did not trust soap. She did not trust water. She did not trust skin that glowed too brightly. In her mind and in the minds of the priests who surrounded her, a clean body was not a sign of health. It was a warning, a danger, an infection of the soul, because clean skin belonged to Moors, to Muslims, to the conquered. And what they bathed, Spain would burn. After the conquest of Granada, public baths, the pride of Islamic architecture, the beating heart of hygiene and ritual purification, were shuttered and smashed, flooded with filth. Anyone found building a new one was watched. Anyone found entering one was accused. And anyone found with soap in their home, in a Christian home, was labelled a heretic. You could be burned for it, burned for being clean. The logic was perverse. If you washed your body, you might be hiding your true religion. If you wore white linen that smelled of lavender, you might be practicing secret Islam. If your children had clean fingernails, clean hair, clean skin, you might be raising little blasphemers under the cloak of civility. The Inquisition adapted accordingly. They began inspecting laundry lines. They questioned neighbours about the smell of soap. They interrogated servants about whether their masters bathed in private. Water became a tool of surveillance. Hygiene became evidence. And purity, once associated with the soul, became a crime of the flesh. Even more grotesque was what followed. The New World, the Americas. When Columbus returned with tales of the indigenous peoples, how they bathed daily in rivers, how their skin gleamed, how they smelled of earth and wind, Isabella was horrified. She ordered the natives to stop bathing, stop washing their hair, stop cleansing their wounds, stop practicing the rituals that have kept them healthy for generations, because to bathe regularly was unchristian. To be clean was to be suspect, and so, a civilization with some of the most advanced public hygiene systems in the world, aqueducts, herbal soaks, sweat lodges, medicinal bathing traditions, was forced into European filth. The Spanish viewed their suffering as a form of purification. Children died from infections that soap could have prevented. Elders wasted away from fevers born of contaminated wounds. But still the priest preached that suffering brings salvation. The more one endured in the flesh, the more one earned in heaven. This was not religious zeal. It was biological warfare wearing the mask of faith. Whole cultures collapsed not just from guns and disease, but from the forced abandonment of hygiene, from laws that punished those who sought to stay clean, from policies that demonized water and weaponized filth. Isabella, they say, bathed twice in her life, once when born, once before her wedding, and she was proud of it. She believed the dirt kept her humble, that the stink was holy, that if she smelled of sweat and decay, she must be close to God. So her court followed. They stopped bathing, they burned soap, they rewrote health as heresy, and turned bathing into blasphemy. Not by accident, but by decree. Because the truth was terrifying. Clean people were harder to control. Clean people remembered who they were. And clean skin carried with it the memory of another world, one with rituals, with dignity, with knowledge passed through generations in steam and water and salt. So they tried to erase it, with fire, with filth, with the holy stink of conquest. She still looks magnificent, even now, even like this. The wig is enormous, powdered white, feathered, jewelled. Her gown is stitched with gold thread, pearls woven into the seams. The bodice pulls her upright and forces her posture into elegance, Every inch of fabric screams power, purity, beauty. But underneath, the queen is rotting. The makeup hides what it can. White lead and vinegar are brushed on daily, thick enough now to crack like dried clay when she turns her head, but cracks don't lie. Beneath the mask, her skin sloughs in sheets, yellowed, raw. Around the edges of her nose, the flesh has receded. Her gums bleed behind blackened teeth. When she speaks, the air around her recoils. The courtiers call it perfume. You know better. The breath of a corpse, and still she smiles. Still she greets ambassadors, signs documents, holds court, gives commands. She plays the role written for her by birth, divine woman, untouchable monarch, while parasites nest in her scalp, chewing at what little remains beneath the wig. She cannot feel them anymore, or worse, she can and no longer reacts. The scalp is weeping, not metaphorically. You help her dress one morning. You part the hairpiece and glimpse the flesh beneath, oozing, red, slick with infection. You press a cloth to it. She hisses, but says nothing. She does not speak of pain. Pain is weakness. Pain is for the poor. Queens do not itch. They do not bleed. They simply endure. You tuck the wig back in place, adjust the lace collar, repowder the cheeks. You lift a scented glove to her trembling hand. She nods. Her eyes are yellowing now. The white's no longer white. Her vision fades. Her memory too. The lead has taken more than skin. It's crawling through her mind, stealing names, blurring faces, erasing the woman beneath the powder. She forgets the names of her children, but she remembers her rouge, because that is what the world sees, not the sores, not the decay, not the smell. They see the silhouette, the dress, the illusion, and so she gives it to them, every day, until the end. When she dies, it is quiet. No one knows at first. She's sitting upright, fully dressed, powdered, rouged. Her hands rested on her lap like carved alabaster. The stink gives her away, not the sweet perfume she always wore, but there is something beneath it. Meat. The scent of decay was masked by jasmine, civet, musk. A smell so thick it settles on the floor like fog. You step forward. Her eyes are still open. A single fly buzzes against her powdered temple, its legs skittering through the white dust. Her smile has stiffened. The skin beneath her lip has split. But she is beautiful. They say she died with dignity. You know she died in filth, powdered, perfumed, parasitized, ruling until the moment her body could no longer carry the weight of the myth. No one removes her wig, no one lifts her skirts, no one peels back the layers. She's laid in a coffin lined with velvet and legend. A queen, a symbol, a saint. They bury her with a sachet of rose petals pressed to her chest, and not a single soul speaks the truth. She smelled like death long before it claimed her.